Hey friends, Kevin here, and today we're going to be talking about how old is too old for the van that you want to use to do van life. And there's not a one solid answer for that, but I'm going to get into the different variables to make sure that those of you shopping for a van end up with something that's going to be right for you. So you don't end up with something that's just going to be a mechanical nightmare that you have to deal with when you get out on the road. So let's get to it. Now, we're sitting here at the time I'm doing this, we're closing on the end of 2021, going into 2022. I like older vehicles. I want things that are paid off. I want the title in my hand. Doing this, I don't want a payment. I'm trying to simplify my life as much as possible. I would recommend other people go that route too, unless they already have a pre-established job that they know they can go and work on the road and make money with. You don't want to be dealing with a payment on a van. So a lot of times that puts us into dealing with some older vehicles. And in different forums and groups that I'm in, I like looking at what everyone else is using for van life with cargo vans, full-size vans, and also with minivans. And I think we all do that, and we're all enamored with what kind of build that person has, and that's normal. We all enjoy doing that too. But the reality of it is the build doesn't matter as much as what kind of mechanical shape that's going to be in, that van is going to be in, and whether it's going to be even dependable for doing van life. So we all come from different backgrounds. Some people are used to having new vehicles. Some people are used to driving older vehicles anyway. Some of you guys and gals are pretty decent mechanics. A lot of you have never worked on anything in your life, which means you're going to be trying to deal with problems on the road, finding mechanics, and sometimes that puts you as a little bit of a disadvantage, depending on where you have a problem, if there's only one mechanic around to solve that problem. So even then, the more that you can learn about the way things work is going to be beneficial to you, just to keep you from being ripped off by the unscrupulous people out there that you're going to have to deal with. But we'll start with minivans first. With minivans, I would not anymore recommend that you get into anything back into the 1990s. The prices are not going to be that different. Even if you're on a low budget, you can find decent vehicles in the couple $1,000 range, a little bit more than that. It just depends on how nice you want it to be. But you're really not going to save any more money by getting anything any older than that. With cargo vans, if you're dealing with something like the Ford Transit and the Mercedes-Benz version of this, these are things that came out 2004, 2005, somewhere in that area. So you're within that guideline with any of them you have. But with any of these other brands of vans, when you're talking Ford and Chevy and Dodge especially, unless I had a lot of mechanical ability and a lot of mechanical know-how, I probably would cut that thing off about 2002 or so and try to stick with something made then. And one of the reasons why, very simply, is when you start back into the 90s now, and certainly you see people in the 80s, and you see people driving these 1971 vans that they're doing for van life. That's great as long as you have a lot of mechanical ability. Because what you're going to run into on these when you start getting older than this is there are a lot of parts that are simply not available anymore. So yeah, you can go out and you can always get a pair of tires and a pair of shocks and a pair of brakes, and you can probably get a muffler regardless of age. And you may be able to get a water pump and an alternator and a starter, even if you're dealing with stuff from the 60s or 70s or 80s or 90s. But other parts, you're just going to start running into problems with. And that problem is they're not going to be easily available. This happens with a lot of suspension parts. This happens with other engine parts other than the ones we've talked about. It certainly happens with interior parts, door panels, locks, things like that. Those manufacturers stopped supporting those vehicles a long time ago, and those parts have dried up. Now, I can tell you this from experience. My big van is an older van. It's a 1993 model. And there are things for it that Dodge, Chrysler simply no longer makes and hasn't made in quite a few years. So if you need parts other than, again, the standard alternator, starter, muffler, brakes that you can get down at any parts store, you're going to be either scouring something like eBay and hoping it's available, or you're going to be having to go to a parts yard, junkyard somewhere, if you can even find a compatible vehicle, and then taking the part off of that to do the repair on your van that you're doing for VanLife. And again, if you have a lot of mechanical ability and stuff, there's nothing wrong with that. But for those that don't have mechanical ability, it's going to be an issue, because you're going to be having to pay a lot of money to somebody else to go out and find these parts for you and take them off and then put them on your vehicle. Or you're simply going to be going to mechanics and they're going to be coming back to you going, "I'm sorry, ma'am, I'm sorry, sir, that part you need to fix your heater up front on the dashboard, it's not available. They don't make it anymore. Sorry, best of luck to you." So I don't want to see people get into those situations because they got this great deal on this 1985 Ford or this 1978 Dodge or whatever model of Chevrolet that they happen to run into. And these are issues you're going to face if you're dealing with older vehicles. So if you already have one of these, you probably already know that. But if you're shopping for your first van, or you're thinking about getting into van life, then you need to take some of what I'm saying here to heart on this. Because money-wise, that 1985 retro model or 1973 retro model that you think is so cool, for the money that you're going to spend to buy that to begin with, you can probably buy a 2005, maybe even a 2010 model. So again, it's being realistic in what your own mechanical abilities is. And again, if you're doing this part-time and you enjoy doing this and you're doing this fairly close to home, it's not as big an issue as if you say, "Hey, I'm going to jump in this van and I'm going to go 2,000 miles way across the country." Because when you get into these smaller places, more desolate places, your options for repair are going to be even less. So I don't want to see somebody that's from the East Coast ending up in Colorado on their first van trip in their 1988 model van, and they get out there and the heater controls mechanism has messed up, and they're trying to deal with these horrible temperatures, and they find out that the parts to fix this van that they're so excited about aren't made anymore. So this would be my guidelines, is try to stay definitely in the 2000s at this point for most people. And I'd love to hear your comments on this. Put your experiences down below. You know, there may be some of you that have some really old vans that you're enjoying, and I think that's great. I think the really old vans are cool. But again, also put how much mechanical experience and things you have with that, because it's going to be different if you have the ability and the tools with you to do all of these repairs on a 1975 model van, whereas, you know, Mrs. Jones that's gotten into doing this and doesn't have those same skills and same tools, she's going to be in bad shape when she, jumps and buys that same model vehicle and takes off across the country and something goes wrong. So again, I'd love to hear your comments down below. There'll be some more stuff coming up soon. I've got some van tours of people I've met on the road that I think you're really going to enjoy seeing their build, and especially hearing their stories about how they got into doing van life. So a lot of good stuff coming up. We'll talk soon.